What's up? I'm Dan Fredenberg, and this is another chance encounter.
Hey, what's up? I'm Dan Fredenberg. I'm a commercial real estate guy. I'm from the internet. We're seeing more properties like this being built in front of a house that's going to be torn down soon.
I understand that there are power lines that are getting kind of close.
What's up again? This is Dan Fredenberg, and that there is a commercial real estate building.
I'm joined today with Joseph Kimbrough. I don't know if I butchered that. How you doing today, Joseph?
I'm doing great. It's Kimbrough.
Kimbrough. Okay, cool. Yeah, that's easy to remember. And I got some exciting news here for you, Joseph, which is that today we are joined by my very favorite audience member. And why is my favorite audience member here today? It's because this is a chance encounter where I interview commercial real estate syndicators, and that means investors, buyers, sellers, stuff like that. And why would I do such a thing? Well, I know because I'm in the business that if you want access to private deals, then you have to have a documented prior substantive relationship, because one day the SEC is going to take a look at your books and say, it's like, okay, so how did you know these people who you got into these deals with, and making sure that everything's on the up and up. So that's why I do this. But before we get into too many details about Joseph, about your business, do you want to say a thing or two before we get started?
I would like to say thank you for having me on today. Yeah, I'm really happy to be here.
Sweet, sweet, awesome. We'll get to buy box and all that kind of stuff. The first segment that we have here is about the distinct motivations. But before I do that, I got to say, but wait, check your eight. And Joseph, I don't know if you can see through your camera and down. It's the audience is five at the 8 o'clock. Maybe they have the ugly, hideous red subscribe button instead of the gray one, and they really
Hmm.
should do something about that. I think that okay, it's just a stupid joke I do every single time. But the five distinct motivations. I've talked to a whole whack of commercial real estate syndicators and investors, and everybody has their own unique why, but I've been able to reduce them down to five different categories that are very distinct, and it'll tell you why they are going to go through all the effort of making their next commercial real estate deal. Because after all, it can take months, and there's all sorts of things that can go wrong. Now, the first group of people, I found the reason why they're making their acquisitions is because they're protecting their purchasing power. And what that means is that some people already have a portfolio of assets, and the way they make ends meet is, rather than a job, they live off of the profits that come from their portfolio. And so the only reason they're going to make a new acquisition is if inflation is wearing away at the purchasing power of the cash flow, or if they can buy at a steep discount because of a crash or for whatever reason that is. Now, that's not why I'm
Hmm.
in this business. The reason I'm into this business is because I'm trading time directly for wealth. I've got a background in technology, and the problem with being a high income earner, high wage earner, high salary earner is you're paying more in tax than anybody else. So it hit me, how can I pivot and take my CRM skills, my CRM agency on all mass marketing, content creation, blah, 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 blah. How can I pivot it where I'm getting rewarded in the form of deployed capital, AKA equity? And that's why I'm doing this. But a lot of people, they get into this business because they hear that there's big money going around, and what they're really up to, it's not just fast tracking the retirement, it's more being able to take over your schedule. And maybe that means
Hmm.
working fewer months per year, or fewer weeks per month, or fewer hours per week, or something. But the main idea is that these guys eventually, they want to scale back, and they want to live on their own terms. And that's in stark contrast to the next group, which they're just plain ambitious. They want to buy their entire hometown. They're in for that generational wealth. They want to make sure that their great grandchildren never have to hold a day job. And that's why they're going to keep hustling into their 90s. That's a very handy person to have around your group. And the last group, they're also going to be hustling into their 90s, but it's for a different reason. They've picked a sector of society, or maybe it's animals, maybe it's the environment, who knows? But they've realized you need a substantial financial backing if you're really going to make a big difference. And so that's why they're making their commercial acquisitions. So, Joseph, as far as you go, those five different motivations, what combination of those describe you best? What's your why?
I would say to help people who need it, and then also to buy your hometown too, to an extent, but to expand upon that even more.
Yep.
So
Yep.
buying states I ain't even been to yet.
Yeah, yeah, I absolutely love it. I absolutely love it. And that brings me to the next question, which is the tolerance for risk assessment. This question here was inspired because securities attorneys, whenever they're doing 506B deals, they always tell you you need to fill out these questionnaires with everybody who's going to be an investor. And one of the
Yep, I'm
questions is
familiar.
about risk, right? And I don't think it's a very good one. But so I've made a different one, and it's a fill in the blanks question to make sure that this business is complex and there are risks involved. So if you could please fill in this blank. There are many popular investment asset classes, but I think blank is too risky. Now your answer can be something inside real estate or not, but Joseph, what's too risky for you?
For me, I would say flipping cars and stocks.
Mm-hmm.
Both are risky. Both are very risky. Both simply because with cars you have to have that appreciation. It has to be able to sell at a higher value. And then stocks is risky just because somebody could wake up one day and say, we feel like the market is going to tank. And so put out a piece of news and then boom, it tanks. It's
Mm-hmm.
self-fulfilling. To me, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, I completely agree. And when you think about these big publicly traded companies, they've got PR departments, and their whole existence is there just to spin whatever's going on in a way to make it sound nicer. And so that's why I like being involved in these syndications, is because you have like better teams. But let's get back to commercial real estate after we have that wonderful animation
Wow.
reminding you to subscribe. It's intense, isn't it? Like it just kills me.
That was that was different.
That was different.
Eating a whole sub.
Exactly, exactly. But in every single episode of Chance Encounters, I pull out the Dan Does Deals Commercial Competency Cube, and you can get your own copy of the Dan Does Deals Core Competency Cube from dandoesdeals.com. And you can print it out. And there's one thing I do, it's really dumb from a marketing perspective, which is I don't even ask for your email address. And you should always ask for contact information in return for your freebie. But I want you to be able to effectively communicate on the subject of commercial real estate deals, and that requires that you know the 6 core rules. And in every episode, I go through all of them. It only takes 2 minutes, but at least that way you'll also know how my guest fits into these deals. So I start off by explaining the repositioner rule. A repositioner looks at a bunch of different properties and does a bunch of different paperwork because they're the acquisitions person. What are they doing with that paperwork, you might ask? Well, there's a fancy word for it. They underwrite the deal. That means they're doing the math. They're figuring out, first of all, is this property even making the amount of money that the broker or seller is claiming it is? Because there's no guarantee about that. But I call these guys repositioners. A lot of people just call them investors. I call them repositioners because it's their responsibility to figure out how they change the business so that it has more upside, so it's making more money. And the first place they're going to look, every repositioner has financier relations or investor relations, and financiers are people who only deal with paper and money. And the reason why they're so pivotal in this business is because if the repositioner can secure a more advantageous loan, that goes straight to the profitability of the property. So that's why they're always going to have investor relations. But let's put that aside for a moment. The first intuitive place where a repositioner is going to find upside is they're going to look at the operations. They're going to stop those Benjamins from going down the toilet. But of course, there's more to operations than unclogging toilets and collecting rent and mowing lawns and things like that. There's also one part which, because of my marketing background, it's a big part of what I do on a GP team, which is making sure that even if you outsource the operations to a third party, if the vacancy rate is really low, then you might need some help finding new innovative ways to fill those additional units. And one of the things about operations, because commercial real estate is such a competitive industry, that's probably not going to be where you find most of the upside. So frequently, they'll get the contractor team involved to do a value add. They'll do renovations on the units so that the next tenant or resident would be happy to pay more in rent than the previous one. But you got to be careful when you're upgrading with contractors, because if you're gold plating the toilets or something like that, it's hard to ROI. And then the other problem, which some syndicators and repositioners have, the one that I have, see, I don't know if you know this about me, but I'm from the internet. So that means I need locals. I need boots on the ground, people who live nearby, who can be there in an hour or two, because that's not going to be me. I'd still be stuck at an airport in an hour or two. So you need somebody nearby who can make sure that the contractors aren't cutting corners, they're finishing on schedule, they're using proper materials. They also keep an eye on the operations. But once the repositioner has figured out which property they're going to get, and they've figured out this team that they're on, they're going to turn around to the financiers and say, hey, I got this property where it's, let's say 350 units. It costs tens of millions of dollars. You don't happen to have, say, tens of millions of dollars you want to lend us, do you? And the financier is going to have one other big question on their mind that I haven't mentioned, which is, who is your sponsor? Who is your KP? And what's that all about? You are not going to be eligible for a commercial loan on one of these big properties unless somebody in the fold already owns a similar asset. So even if you have a bunch of friends, let's say you're a physician or something like that, you want to pool your resources and take over a building. If you want to be eligible for the loan and therefore get the leverage from it, you're going to have somebody who already owns an apartment complex. And on top of that, you're going to need a certain amount of liquidity. And then among the ownership team, the GPs, you need a balance sheet of at least the amount of the loan. But if you've got all those pieces, you've got yourself a commercial real estate deal. So Joseph, it sounds like you got a lot going on. Which of the sides would you say are you most likely in your organization likely to contribute in your next deal?
So for what I do is I'm more on the private equity side. So I bring the equity and invest as an equity partner.
All right.
So you can say financier to an extent.
Right, exactly. Okay, cool. And so you do that part there, and then of course you underwrite the deals, and then asset management would be part of a part of that as well. That makes lots of sense. So the next question then has to do with ideal property then. And when syndicators, investors are saying, hey, what kind of deals are you looking for? What's your buy box? What it's easier to say yes to? They're really asking about three things. The first one is geography. Which states? Which counties, possibly even which neighborhood, okay? It's all going to matter, all right? The second one is going to be the size. And we generally talk about multifamily on this show. Sometimes we have people from self-storage or mobile home parks and things like that. And the way with those three that you count the size is by the unit count or the number of pads in mobile home parks. But the reason for that is because you're going to have different types of teams taking over 15 unit apartment complexes compared to 150 unit complexes. So the size is going to be important. But the third one is class. And I separate the word class into two separate words. The first one is condition. For example, how old is the building? How beat up is the building? How many luxuries and amenities does it have? Is it, really no frills, or is it a really, really nice place that anybody would be happy to live in? That's condition. Now, the second meaning of class is the area where the property is located. So that might mean the school districts where the property is located. It means the crime rate where the property is located and the amount of traffic that goes by. But both of those two meanings of class use the same rating system as in grade school, where A plus is at the top and then A minus and B plus. So Joseph, as far as you and your organization goes, what's the sweet spot, or does it depend more on the sponsor of the deal? What's easier for you guys to say yes to?
Okay, so we work with a sponsor, a couple, but one that I work with specifically, they invest in Texas and the Southeast markets like Georgia, Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina. And then also typically between 100 to 200 units is what we'll invest in. And then also Class B, Class C, and some Class A. And we'll even do some new builds that we might invest in. So that's pretty much our buy box there.
Excellent. So then the next question has to do with who you're disproportionately well suited to help. And me personally, because of my marketing and my automation background with the different CRMs and whatnot, the sponsors and KPs are really near the top of my list because they've got the foundation to really make a big difference. Like a guy like me can really change how it's run. Whereas when you're first getting started as a repositioner, you need people who are going to be putting in 80 to 120 hour weeks. The locals are also another group that I'm on the lookout for. Joseph, I don't know if you do 506B raises or 506C. If you do
506B.
Okay, 506B is okay. So make sure you don't entice any investors. If you have any delicious pastries on your desk, avoid waving it in front of the camera because
Hmm.
I like donuts. Donuts are good. That would entice me. But you can still say beginners as well. But who are you best suited to help? Who's in the audience who should reach out to you?
I would say people who they're wanting to get into multifamily, they have cash sitting on the sidelines right now. They don't really like, hey, I want to get invested. I'm the guy to talk to. Just reach out. You can have that conversation, and we'll go from there.
All right, beautiful. Exactly. So you got to get that documented. And the best way to reach out to us, me, I've got a really distinct last name. So LinkedIn is a really great place to find me. I spend a ton of time there. This QR code that you see on your screen, if you use your phone to scan that, that brings you to the FAQs page of 506 BME, which is the platform I use to help new syndicators or existing ones document their substantive relationship and make sure that it's verified by a third party. And it really is the airtight sort of situation where you can't really hide your level of sophistication, appetite for risk, and that sort of stuff, which you can't really do with CRMs. But as far as you go, Joseph, I know that we met via LinkedIn, so that's probably a good place.
Yeah,
But is there a
it's a
website
great
or,
place to.
yeah, LinkedIn's the
Yeah, I would
best.
say LinkedIn is a great place to reach me at, and then also my website, investinapartmentsnow.com, is another great place to reach me at as well.
All right, that's a sweet domain. All right, sweet. And then the last thing that I have, it's actually not for you, Joseph, it's for you in the audience, which is a public service announcement. If you've been watching this episode and you've been experiencing searing pains in your eyeballs and like migraine-like symptoms, it's probably the hideous red subscribe button that's right there. And it's free to get rid of it. You just click on it. And of course, I'm biased. I want you to click on it because if enough people do, then YouTube will actually start paying for these videos instead of me. And that would be really great. As far as you're concerned, as I said, it doesn't cost you anything. All it means is my videos might show up on your list of suggestions, but you can go ahead and ignore those suggestions. I just appreciate the fact that you spent this time with me. Just like Joseph, I appreciate you joining me today. This has been great getting to know you a little bit better.
Yeah, thank you. You too. I'm glad to be on.
Awesome. Thanks.
Make sure you 506B me. Any syndicators, make sure you 506B me.
Hi.
Oh, hey, yeah, here's my code. You got your QR code scanner? Okay, yeah, oh yeah, just hold it right in the square there. Okay, cool. And now you hit open in browser.
Okay.
Okay, are you already logged into 506B me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, so there's my video. So now I'm already on your watch list. So when you get back to your hotel, you can find out what my core competencies are and my level of sophistication. Sound good?
Yeah.
I love your hat. Real estate's a scam. That's really funny.
Yeah.
Nice meeting you.
You too.
506B me, everybody.